We're going to begin with the speech Anthony Albanese has delivered in Perth this afternoon. Nearly 6 months since taking over the Labor leadership, this is his first major policy address, and he's made his first policy commitment. A lot of the rest of the speech was about vision, about priorities, not about policy detail. Given it's less than 6 months since the election and still a long time to go before the next election, that's not entirely surprising. But what he was focused on, the sort of areas he has put down with markers here as priorities for his Labor team, are interesting. They go to future industries, future jobs. Not the first time politicians spoken about these things, but he's tried to flesh out a little bit about where he sees the opportunities for new jobs in the future, particularly when it comes to renewable energy, when it comes to the gig economy, also when it comes to trying to encourage things like hydrogen power and a new export industry there, lithium processing and battery making in Australia as well, all the while protecting traditional coal mining jobs. Is that possible? Well, the government says not with the sort of climate change policies Labor took to the last election. Anyway, take a look at Anthony Albanese's speech today in Perth.
The Labor leader took his whole shadow cabinet to Perth, knowing WA again rejected his party at the last election. The focus in a state in which unemployment is at 6%, all about jobs.
Today I announced that Labor in government will establish a new national partnership to drive improved outcomes in the vocational education and training sector.
It would be called Jobs and Skills Australia and be independent from the government, seeking to match workers with growing demand in government-funded services, including the NDIS and aged care.
What we have in Australia at the moment is a labour market that's characterised by the mismatch between what workers have to offer and what employers need.
The government has lashed Labor's record on skills and training, claiming they failed to properly manage the issue when they were last in government.
They oversaw the biggest fall in apprenticeship numbers of 110,000. Why? Because they ripped $1.2 billion of employer incentives out of the system.
Labor is also calling for greater protections for casual workers, particularly in the gig economy, such as Uber drivers, saying without an opportunity for permanent employment, people are unable to get a proper wage or things such as home loans.
It is time that we have a conversation about new forms of worker protections.
This is the first of 3 vision statements from Anthony Albanese designed to recalibrate the party following its May election loss, but also to convince his colleagues that he'll put Labor in a competitive position before voters next head to the polls in 2022.
He also hopes to quell the debate over the party's next climate change policy, with no focus today on an emissions target, hoping an emphasis on technology instead will bring the party together.
The road to a low-carbon future can be paved with literally hundreds of thousands of clean energy jobs, as well as supporting traditional jobs, including coal mining.
It's expected Labor's election review will identify the ambiguity on coal as a problem that cost the party key seats when the findings are handed down next week. Eliza Edwards, Sky News, Canberra.
Now, a few points to make. Yes, there's a not-so-subtle repositioning under Anthony Albanese to the policies that Labor took under Bill Shorten to the last election and the one before that. Not so much about redistribution as wealth creation. He emphasised support for wealth creation, for economic growth, for small businesses, well, really trying to show that this is the new path for Labor. How he'll deliver all of that, we still don't know. The detailed policy will come closer to the next election, we are assured. But also when it comes to this jobs boom he's talking about in renewables, well, that is a process that's already underway and no doubt will continue. But what would a Labor government do to really turbocharge that, to ensure that we do see more value capture of the sort of wind turbine manufacturing, battery making and so on? Well, there are only a number of levers governments can realistically use here: subsidising particular industries, tax breaks for particular industries. It might be another renewable energy target type of mechanism as well. We don't know that yet, but the Shadow Resources Minister, Joel Fitzgibbon, joined us earlier on the program, and here's what he told us.
But not just digging them up, but ensuring that we add value to them here in Australia rather than export the rare earths, only to import them back back into this country, whether it be as a battery.
How do you do that? What would government do to make that happen?
You need to provide the environment and to give business incentive to do these things onshore rather than go seeking lower cost jurisdictions overseas. Now, he didn't talk about how he didn't talk about, well, obviously it's a value statement today. He didn't talk about how Labor intends to do that. But it's important that we start talking about that now, almost 3 years out from an election, and that gives us a considerable period of time to consult with business, talk to business about how they believe Labor could best achieve that very, very good objective.